All righty, that's it.
There. Clutter over here. Yeah, isn't that nice? So before we get started, I want to check. About this. So, hi everyone, it got quiet all of a sudden. I guess I'm standing up here, it's like, oh, we're getting ready to this. Welcome to, what is this, week 4, I think. Yeah, week 4, amazing. This is the week, by golly, this is the week that we will figure out the technology for Zoom. So that the people at home can hear as well. So we have now added more speakers to the room. And before we get into tonight's presentation, I want to hear from people on Zoom about how does it look and how does it sound?
It looks good.
Good, looks good. I heard it look good. How's it sound?
So far, so good.
Oh, you sounded really good. Who was that?
That's Greg.
Greg, you sound really good.
Thank you.
It was like you were right on, in the room. Little odd. So my good friend LaBonty is going to be our presenter tonight. And one of the things that I was reminded about last week is that I am a loudmouth. When I speak, I was trained as a musician, and so I am trained to be on stage and to go do that kind of thing, and not everybody does that. And so when we get into the presentation here, GJ, I think he's a pretty good.
I can carry it. Carry my voice.
Good too. But if for any reason you can't hear, let us know. We will stop and we'll fix it. Because by golly, we want you to get the whole presentation because it's a great show. So, as I said, GJ LaBonty is our presenter tonight. He has been with UTA for 20 years, more than 20 years. My goodness. Most of that time as a long-range planner. He is now the manager of the customer experience for the agency since 2017. He spent some time as the interim planning director when Laura Hansen jumped overboard. Yeah. These folks know Laura. She was here first night. He has a bachelor's in architecture from Temple and a master's of science in geography from the University of Utah, an esteemed institution. And he is a recent supporter of the University of Utah Law School. He donated a child to the law school. And the child survived, actually thrived. So GJ, thank you for being here tonight. And so our schedule is that we're about 7 minutes after. We're going to run. We always take a break at 5 till. Okay. And people like to ask questions. Sure. So I don't know how you want to handle it. Have them saved to the end.
Yeah, I think it works when some catches your eye or you get a question pop up in your mind. Just shout it out, and I'll do my best to answer.
You won't be surprised to find out that these students, and by the way, people on Zoom, you can ask questions too. In fact, please do it. You don't have to use the chat. I mean, you can, if you want to just message it, but you could also just holler, and just start talking. That works.
Yeah, I have everything.
So these are people who are interested in transit. Yeah. And so they will be curious as to how we do things.
Straightforward, believe it or not.
Okay. Well, I'll let you run the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So as Keith mentioned, I've been with UTA just a little over 20 years. I signed on in 2002, right after the Olympics came through town. I literally started the month after because they had kind of an all hands mandate that everybody in the agency, executives down to operators, had to be kind of made available for being out in the system and helping the visitors for the Olympics. And so the person who hired me said, I don't have time to train you, call you in a month. And so, but anyway, so I hired back on in 2002. And the long range and strategic planning is something that I really enjoyed. I heard Dave mention the Wasatch Regional Council, Mountain Lands Association of Government. Those are my primary contacts that I worked with a lot on the 30-year plan. And we saw a lot come in my time. One of the bigger ones was the S line, the streetcar. I have, that's not a picture of it, but I call this my Back to the Future slide. It's like nothing's changed. It's just 50 years in between. So, yeah. So, but why I was interested in this particular position was because what we work on is the tactile stuff, the stuff that people interact with kind of in their journey. So this is everything from the mobile ticketing and mobile trip planning app to fare collection technologies. And our claim to fame is we got the track system to move. So I lost my ability to advance. There we go. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. Like I said, I call this the Back to the Future scenario. We had a really robust rail networks, built up throughout downtown Salt Lake City, up in the avenues, and even up through Idaho, and then down through Payson, with the interurban rail network. And so it's hard to remind people that this was here before, and that going back to it is, it's the right thing to do, just because these systems were enacted to enable people that didn't have access to the other modes of transportation at the time, get to their jobs, get to school, whatever they were going to be doing. But so I love going through these from the Utah State Archives, the streetcar and the interurban lines.
Were the right-of-ways maintained?
That's a good question. I assumed at that point, these were private operators, that they had to use some sort of lease agreements, I'm sure, with the city, maybe even the state at the time, to operate within those rights of ways. Yeah, I don't know the specific answer to that one. So what happened after World War II? Cars became sort of affordable to average families, and our good friends at GM and Firestone and Standard Oil conspired to basically run the rail and bus systems out of business. So they were interested in selling tires for cars and gas to run them. So anyway, that's kind of the turning point from what was a robust transit network in the city to sort of a car culture that was coming around the corner. I like this graphic on the right-hand side here. If any of you are familiar with the SPUI or the spaghetti ball or whatever you wanted to call it, down there at 21st and I-15. It used to look like the picture on the left there before our planning geniuses came up with the idea that we really needed to facilitate more automobile traffic and movement across the valley. And so they just kind of plowed right through what is now Sugar House to kind of make this happen. So, and then finally, slowly, the conspiracy kind of took root, and we went. Airways Motor Coach was ironically the bus lines that came in serve Salt Lake City didn't want to compete with the trolleys and the streetcar systems, and so they sued to try and put the existing motor coach lines out of business. But yeah, Utah Light and Traction. Anybody ever been over to Trolley Square? It's where they operated out of. So all those big bays that you see on 7th East, those are actually trolley bays. Yeah, around 1941, we saw the last of those streetcars serving Salt Lake City. And the bus ridership plummeted too, again, because of the rise of popularity in the automobile at the time. So where did we come from? So when I say we, ETA, we were formed as a special district back in 1969. And the cities, and I believe it was the counties as well, had the option of paying for the service to come through their cities. And so Sandy, Salt Lake, and Murray were the first to vote to form a transit district. And what that meant was they were willing to subsidize transit in their communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, how we receive our funding. In 73, was extended to Weber and Davis counties. And then in 1985, Utah County came into the 20th century. Today we serve over 1,400 square miles, and that's everywhere from Payson to Brigham City. Actually, not even Payson. Our service area actually goes all the way down to Santa Clara. We service that far south, but if we needed to, at some point, the growth happened, we could extend commuter rail that far. And then they formed these municipal planning organizations, the MPOs, WFRC and MAG, and they are responsible for what I was talking about, this third long range plans. Go out on their website and see what the current one looks like. When there's larger projects planned, they go through this process here. They don't necessarily deal with local bus service.
Isn't Tooele County a part of it?
It is. This map's a little misleading. You're right. Tooele County is actually part of the WFRC MPO. They do have representation. Yeah. Anything that you've seen out on the streets today in terms of rail networks, streetcars, BRT in Utah County was all on a plan somewhere about 30 to 40 years ago. And it just, keeps moving forward, and then the demand grows. And eventually, I'll talk about it here in a second. This is eventually we needed more money. And so the transit districts have the capability of using county sales tax dollars to increase service, fund and bond for rail systems. It's one of the funding mechanisms that we have for growth in the system. So you can see that it's pretty obvious where the lion's share of our funding comes from is locally approved. I'll talk about that in the next slide. Locally approved option sales taxes. The rest, people want to say that why can't transit pay for itself? Why can't UDOT pay for itself? Right? So we get about 11 to 15% in any given year in fares revenue for that, and then the rest is advertising and investments. So, and we do great occasional grants. So on the bigger projects, like for instance, Front Runner, the north end, the south ends of the Front Runner system were funded through a federal, they called it a New Starts grant, and I think we got pretty sizable portion. I'm going to say 80% funding through that, and then we had to come up with a 20% match locally, and we would bond against that local option sales tax.
Hey, GJ, I
yeah,
think we have a question on Zoom here. Hey, Ben, do you want to unmute? Maybe it will.
Can you put it in the chat?
No, I'll let you know if it comes
It's a
through.
hand button by accident.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
Okay. What?
I do have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
roughly how this compares to other districts of similar size around the country?
Around the country, we're all in about the same boat. It's not anywhere between 10 to 15 people that can get up to 25% are like the New York Cities of the world where they have such a captive market there.
For their,
Fair return, yeah, they call it return, fare box recovery. But yeah, and it never will. I mean, I'll state it bluntly, that we'll never be able to pay to run our operations 100% through locally, or not through locally, fare box recovery.
is in other districts, is the local option sales tax also the majority?
It varies, but that's the most common is that you see if you look around the country at some of the transit districts. In some cases, Maryland's one example, they're actually a state agency, their transit division, so they are funded physically, they're funded financially through the state. But that's not a very common model. So what happens? What does the local option sales tax referendum look like? They get ugly. I'm not if anybody are old enough to remember this one back in 2015, but we were looking for funding to so the 2012 projects, the front runner north and south had been finished, and this was really just to increase service to multiple communities and start research into these BRT lines that you start seeing coming up. But they just turn into campaign battles, for lack of a better term. So, you know, we work with our city and county partners. Well, first we have to get the counties to agree, because the counties are the only ones that can impose the tax. If they agree, then they start working side by side with us, because we can't advocate, UTA cannot advocate, can't spend UTA's money, the sales tax option, or the sales tax monies. We weren't able to participate in this because of the lobbying for political campaign. But anyway, so the cities, the counties are the ones that all fund this. I think down in the bottom left there is he was the director of the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. We get those kind of endorsements and those kind of partnerships. And then inevitably the opposition steps in, right? So we had, forgot this say something for prosperity. It's very prosperity. Yeah, they were pretty relentless, and they were heavily funded to oppose this. And in the end, it failed in 17 of the 12, 7 of 17 counties. So it failed in Salt Lake, Utah, Tooele, but it passed in Davis and Weber counties. And so that's the way it goes. And so we had additional sales tax funds coming in those two particular counties. Did I state what the total available was? Yeah, so the breakdown, it's a quarter, it would have been a quarter of a cent that would have been broken down this way. 10% to the cities and towns, 10% to transit systems, and then another 5% to the counties. And they're not all related to transit. They could do other things with those dollars. They could make road improvements. They could do state of good repair with some of those funds. But we had the potential, if it had passed, in the counties that we operate, to have an additional $20.3 million in annual funding.
Question on Zoom, actually. Are there any plans to apply for large grants given the recently passed hundreds of billions of dollars in federal money allocated to transit, like maybe some rail service on the west side?
The short answer to that is yes. We work with our federal delegation in DC, on the Senate side and the House of Representatives side. So Yes, and as a matter of fact, we are just receiving a grant right now that through an earmark. It's not necessarily a grant per se, but Representative Chris Stewart set up an earmark for Salt Lake City to receive. I'm going to say it's close to $2 million. So they're reconstructing the 200 South Corridor into sort of a multimodal busway. And you guys will suffer through this all next year, I promise you. You ride the 2 or the 4 or the whatever, up 200 South, you're going to feel the pain. But when it's done, it'll be pretty impressive. So we do. We lobby our delegation. We watch for federal announcements of funding opportunities. We've taken advantage of something called a no-low grant, where we can buy electric vehicles. So yeah, we do supplement it. Problem with those are their one-time funds, right? So that we can't use it for operations, and it won't renew. So it's like sort of the one-time fund, you bond against it to be able to build some bigger things. But I don't know if that was a clear enough answer. Person that asked it. So yeah, it failed. So Americans for Prosperity, was that them? Yeah, they probably felt good about themselves.
So did you just put all that money in one big bucket, or did those counties that didn't pass it?
It would stay in that the boundaries of the county.
So
So
Salt Lake County actually suffered from its
Yeah.
transit allocation because of that.
but I mean, we did our best. And we, at that time, 2015 would have been, I want to say Rocky Mayor 2015.
Becker, it would have been.
Oh, Becker. He was all on board, you know, he was 100% on board. County council, they were kind of split in Salt Lake County. Yeah, no, didn't happen. And that's what we ended up with was in Weber County about 3.2 million, in Davis about 3.9 million of that 20 million I just said we could have had access to. But so there's the sausage and how it's made relative to how sales tax initiatives work throughout the state. We're currently working on a new one. It's called the fifth. So all of those initiatives up through 2015 brought our dedicated sales tax up to a full penny per dollar, right? So the next initiative is to take it to a penny plus a quarter. So they're just calling it the fifth, but they're working on the plan for that now. But you could possibly see that if you live in the area along the Wasatch Front, be asked to vote on a referendum like that. It usually comes up as a referendum on a national ballot initiative. We typically like to be on the presidential election years, just for turnout perspective. So anyway, and so who looks out for us? And so the state has been our very interested or curious as to what EPA does with their money and how they raise it. So they've come in and kind of done some tweaking of the structure, the governance structure at EPA. There used to be 16 part-time board members.
Highly trained and
Very well.
very competent.
Keith remembers them. Keith was an excellent board member and yeah, brought a lot of great ideas to the table. But it was 16 people. You had to convince it. Okay. Yeah, right. You had 16
Is it 16? Wow.
at one point, that was the biggest of them
Okay.
all. Yeah, you had to have, dialogue with your partners, with your board member partners. So the government, state government, came in and kind of tweaked things up, and appointed 3 full-time board members. So they literally sit in the building where I work downtown. They still conduct the board meetings every Wednesday. They vote on agenda items that come up, but they're there full time. doing their jobs. And then as part of that restructuring, they formed a local advisory committee, which looked a little bit more like the old board. It's got about 12 members, and it's made up of representatives from different parts of the region. Nine members from across the region. And that they tried to give equal representation. I mean, people don't like it, but, Salt Lake City is the biggest city in the state. And so it gets two representatives on that particular council to represent the city. The compensation packages of the trustees, and it was an ugly season for UTA back then. But this has really turned out to be a good thing for us at the end of the day, because they're so involved in our day-to-day business and operations that they can speak to the county councils and the city councils and the community councils out in the world, and they're speaking from real life experience in the office. And then we formed 2 years ago. Again, this was mandated by the state legislation, Citizens Advisory Committee of 12 members. And that there's a rotating terms for those seats. But we usually post it pretty publicly if any of you are interested in it. It's not terribly time consuming, but we do get advice from them. And the bigger happened to be the chair, not the chair, but UTA representative over the Citizens Advisory Committee when they were formed. And one of their first recommendations was to provide this immediate alert information. This is verbatim one of their suggestions that they provided. Push text and email notification of alerts. And if any of you use the transit app, we do that now. So if you subscribe, if you ride Front Runner, I ride Front Runner in the red line every day. That's all I want to know about. So if something's going wrong on those two lines, just send me a text. I'll know whether to either drive my truck to Murray and jump on the train there if there's been a breakdown. So that's kind of the input that we got from what we get from the Citizens Advisory Committee. So that's sort of the governance model that we are working under right now at UTA. So the Committee for Accessible Transportation, I knew I was forgetting one. The CAT committee is comprised of, again, nominated members with disabilities, and they represent sort of the spectrum of disabilities. So they got, hearing and visual and physical, and they just bring together a wealth of information that we may not be aware of. I mean, there was the ADA Act in 1990, but the biggest thing that we did after the passage of that act was get all the buses to be wheelchair accessible. But we learned stuff on a daily basis because they're the ones out there using the system, and oftentimes it's their only means of transportation. So things like that photo on the far right in the middle, we laugh about it because, bless their heart, somebody said there wasn't a bench there, so they built one out of rocks and a log. And but we knew that wasn't a sufficient solution for a person.
Where is that?
It was up in Weber County, I believe, something like that.
You have a bus to Grantsville.
You'll see some creative solutions out there, but we're trying to address them as quickly as we can. So this stop was built to full 1990 ADA compliance, so that bus can pull up, deploy the ramp. A person has enough room to maneuver a mobility device to access the vehicle. And in the last year, and down in the bottom right-hand corner, we still have a motor coach fleet called MCI's, motor coach industry buses. But the older versions of these vehicles had sort of a platform that came out at about 5 feet, maybe. Well, it came out right at the height of the floor of the bus seats. And a person, and then it lowered itself down, then a person would roll onto that and sort of be lifted up. They were strapped in and protected to keep from sort of any accidents happening. but it wasn't terribly dignified a way for them to sort of access the vehicle. And so this is the newest version of the motor coach industry bus. They have their own boarding location. They can trigger the door and the ramp to open for themselves, board and load all by themselves. That was pretty innovative. And then over the last year, I said we've gotten involved in seat coverings. And mostly the new blue seats were to reduce the need for maintenance. The nighttime crews coming through could easily just kind of wipe them down and fix anything that was broken. But that picture on the right within priority seating was something my team fought pretty hard for. And so we made them a different color. We didn't want it to be a bright color like a red or a yellow. We didn't want to stigmatize the people that were going to sit in those sections, but we made it clear that these seats were, if somebody got on and needed that space, were for that. I'm pretty proud of that particular accomplishment. Yeah, we did a strategic plan about, I'm going to say about 6 years ago, looking out to 2040. What does this future look like? And this was, we just kind of brainstormed on a whiteboard and I gave a graphic artist to sort of complete this rendering of, what a connected, walkable, multimodal community could look like. So it's kind of a long range vision, but trying to accommodate everything, right? So we weren't doing it to exclude vehicular traffic. So you got the freeway system over there, but why not consider burying lanes? Put them down to low grade and use the bridges over top for open parks and anyway, keep the visual clutter of the freeways kind of out of sight. And I think, yeah, that's it. I don't know, it won't take
Nice.
quite as much time, but
That's all right. We'll fill it up.
okay.
So, if someone had an idea for different bus service, say, I don't know, a different configuration for bus service in the canyons, where's the on-ramp? Where do they plug that idea in? I mean, is there a kind of a setup portal for people to submit ideas, or is it just kind of, you send a text and it goes out to the void and you never hear anything back?
No, the most common way we receive feedback, and unfortunately a lot of it's negative, is through our customer service department. So they gather all of any and all incoming calls, emails, texts. Some people just walk right up to the customer service counters and tell us what their issues are. And a lot of times they do that. They say, what happened to X service that was out here, 2 years ago? And we have to talk about that and why, it may not. But it's also where we get a lot of the ideas generated, like the four came out of a collaboration with Salt Lake City and our service planning department. They can do the modeling to find out what kind of demographics and population are going to be in a particular part of our service area, and they design that to meet that demand. We call it latent demand. There's a population of people that have certain socioeconomic characteristics that we know may need this service. And so it's not they don't put them in a hat and draw out the ideas, but they did start what they call a 5-year service plan. And so their 2-year service plan is based on funding to be able to operate the system the way it is today. Years 3 through 5 are what they call planning years, out planning years. And anything could make it onto that list, the 3 to 5 year plan.
So where's the inbox for that plan?
Number one, I would say that's our customer service
Good.
comments. Yeah, they make it. I get customer service comments. They know what to do with them when they come in that way.
Because people are usually, I mean, for me, I think, oh, the complaint box, yeah,
No.
right. That's going nowhere.
No.
I know you're saying that, and I know it's true because I've been on the other side
Yeah.
when I was a board member. Just wondering, how does that communicate to people so they feel like, yeah, someone's really listening?
Well, what will usually happen is the customer service agent will ask if you want a response. And you can say, yes, please email me back, call me back with your response to my question. And we will do that. But as soon as it gets submitted through customer service, it gets assessed as to what department is the best one to sort of deal with that. And so a new route, or why a route went away, or why a route's not performing so well, that will get routed to our service development department, and they will address it personally. So I think
That was a softball question because I knew the answer, but I say it. A lot of people don't assume that customer service response.
It's just a complaint.
Is real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, they serve an enormous, they provide an enormous benefit to the agency through, well, they know it. They know the system. I mean, when you say, I had a problem on the 200 today at 16th and 1600 or 600 South State Street. They'll know what stop that was, and they can make a comment about it. So they're really quite literate about the system. They don't advocate. They're really just kind of pass-throughs for those kind of comments. And then our customer service director has recently started this, what she calls I'll get it wrong, but a closed loop or a connected loop or something like that, where once it comes into the pipeline, she wants to see it through to its full resolution before it's closed out, the comment. So, yeah, they're taking it pretty seriously. The big stuff, gondolas, those have to go through those MPOs that I put up there on the board.
it's a big capital.
Get them on the 30-year plan. And that's not as easy as it sounds. Well, because it affects jurisdictions, right? So the gondola, I think, is Cottonwood Heights, if I'm not mistaken. Or Sandy. Might be Sandy. I can't remember. Right. So you just get so many different players. You got the National Forest Service. You got UDOT. You got whatever city it is. I don't remember which it is. You got the county. They got a dog in that fight, and then us, right? And we're probably able to provide one option of the two that are out there. But yeah, those are when they open up the plan, the 30-year plan for comment. That's your time to let them have it.
Where will they go from where to where?
Go from somewhere near Lakai restaurant down there, and then only have 2 stops. Yeah. Stopping at Snowbird and Alta.
I was just in Mexico City over the holidays. They have these unbelievable gondola systems serving the communities on these hills.
Yeah, there's like no infrastructure, no roads, right? Yeah.
Dave, so with UTA, if you were interested in data of like ridership, fare collection, where fares are collected, like what routes have what ridership, is that available?
It is I'm not familiar enough with if the fares are publicly available, but we do have a data portal on our site. Pretty slick. You can go out there and download it. That's as much data as you want to kind of play with. I'll send a link.
If you had more questions, like beyond the data that's there, is there some?
Those are the things, like if you're saying you don't believe that this is the ridership on a
If
certain
it's
route.
not as fine grained as you'd like, or. There's some data that you don't have posted.
Yeah. There might be a point of contact on that website. I don't remember off the top of my head. It gets pretty granular. It gets down to the bus stop level. So.
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the feasibility plan,
With the what?
the Rio Grande plan.
Oh, I'm gonna say I honestly had no clue what it was until about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
No, I know that's dumb, I work for the transit agency, I should know this, but I heard it talked about, that it was something about redirecting Front Runner over closer to the Rio Grande station, but I never studied it. Somebody sent me the links to the two guys that are kind of promoting the research of they call it like train box.
Yeah.
That right there, and once the train gets off the main right away, down around wherever it is, 9 South, 8 South, something like that, then it goes underground. And then emerges somewhere north of North Temple. I don't remember all the details, but they've done their homework. They aren't just throwing out some random crazy thought. They've done a lot of research into pedestrian and bicycle accessibility. It's all locked right now by all the off ramps coming into the city. Eliminate all of those. We could invigorate the Rio Grande Terminal, which is just a beautiful facility. Yeah, it's always troubled me that we got so close. We got within a block.
Why did you stop? Not sure.
It was because of all the constraints with the the off ramps, the obstacles, I'm gonna say it and I'll probably regret it, but we were under this sort of on schedule and under budget type model at UTA. And so anything that would have sort of introduced those kinds of like property takings, environmental impacts, anything that was really going to slow down the construction of the front runner system, really wasn't entertained. But I think it's got sound reasoning behind it. It cost a fortune. I think it's like 800 million. Was there? He says it'll pay for itself. That's with reinvestment.
Yeah, value capture. I mean, all that public land that could be, then privately developed.
That's-
Probably
yeah.
good. So Matt, you got somebody else?
Yeah, I do. Are there any plans in the works to improve some of the central stations by adding amenities like restrooms, water fountains, even convenience stores, just depending on the remoteness and,
We get those a lot. We get,
available space?
we go back and forth on the idea of public restrooms. There actually are operator restrooms at every central hub throughout, but those are for the train and bus operators. It's not that we don't believe in that as a benefit, a public benefit to the customers, ETA customers. It's just the biggest barrier to those facilities has to do with safety. So it would have to be a monitored facility. There'd have to be some way to be able to, protect people that were in there by themselves without any kind of protection, per se. And then on top of that, it just adds that additional maintenance and upkeep of the facilities. So for those two reasons, we've hesitated, and there's plenty of examples out there of other agencies that have tried it, and they struggle with it. It sounds like a good idea on paper. What was the other one?
How does UTA address like crime on newer, routes along its way for the S line, for example, like how to ensure like rider safety and.
Yeah. We do have our own police force, and they do patrol what they can. They basically break their coverage of their patrols up to a percentage of frequency, how frequent the services are, and how often an officer will be around on a particular mode. But in the S line, in the case of the S line, it's a little tricky because we leased half of the right away to the Parley's Trail group with the to be able to construct the Parley's Trail from Bonneville Shoreline Trail to the Jordan River Trail. So there's a different set of rules for that particular space versus our train space. Again, it's customer service. It's customers coming in and going, I was on the S line last night and I didn't feel safe, or I was waiting at a platform, didn't feel safe. Well, honestly, this is kind of one of the examples that we're trying to address the issues with. Where that one's actually up here on the U campus, up in front of the Union Building. lighting the shelters at night. These happened to be, we built these when they had the whole parking lot ripped up, so we were able to provide direct power to the shelter itself, but we're exploring solar solutions. So safety's in my wheelhouse of things to address. Yeah.
You mentioned the second south corridor. Talk about any other big projects you're excited about in the next 5 years.
Yes, another one that we're really focused on is down on 3300 South. It's from the Mill Creek, can't remember what the name of the station is, Mill Creek up to Wasatch Boulevard, up there by the REI and the Smiths. Trying to make that into a high express bus service, and then ultimately connect with the 35, go across, we make it one route, 33/35, and then it would go clear across the valley at 15-minute headways and try and provide some, improved amenities and facilities. So that's a big one. Utah County, they're looking at doing something similar to what they did on University Avenue, but on State Street. So like a high capacity, high frequency BRT route with probably with center running platforms and things like that. Ogden is just about to open a new one. They opened a small portion of it over by the D Event Center, but there'll be a frequent BRT service from the Ogden Frontrunner station all the way through and up to Weber State and then over to the IHC, but not IHC, the KD hospital there. So there's a few big ones coming out of the pipeline. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I've already asked.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was thinking about the old prison site. Your drawing looked a lot like that.
Yeah.
That seemed like a good place to put a greenfield transportation hub, kind of reaching out to the west side of Utah Lake. Did that work out for you, or?
You're talking about the state prison that right there around the point of the mountain. Yeah. The state has its eye on that. They are very keen to have a multi-use community built up in there. The drawings, they show the
Very walkable. And
well, if you believe them, that's what they're shooting for, right? Is the accessible community. But to their credit, they've actually envisioned a rail corridor kind of serving that. So come off of the blue line south of Sandy somewhere. And it's like there's a cloud, like a miracle happens here. You get the train from one side of the freeway to the other. But yeah, it's a pretty big project. You'll be hearing about that one a lot in the news. We're only a small part of the redevelopment that they have planned for that area, and they call it the Silicon Slopes. It's supposed to be the cool name.
So 54th says it's slated for a 15 core. What does that mean? I've seen that in the WFRC. I'm not, does that mean a dedicated bus lane? Does that mean 15-minute service? I see that it goes all the way over to Wasatch Boulevard.
Right.
So what are the facilities going to look like? Is it going to be dedicated bus routes?
When we call something a core route or a tier 1 route or a frequent transit network route, whatever term you want to end up using for it, it's sort of us partnering with the communities that would serve. And so I think that in that case, it'd be Taylorsville, Sandy, and I can't remember all the cities along the corridor, but they're going to invest with us, either by letting us use certain rights of way along the street. That happens to be a state street. That's a UDOT road. They've been good partners though with that. But yeah, so the vision is to set that up to be, we want to distinguish them, not for discriminatory reasons, but we want to distinguish those kinds of routes, those core routes from sort of our everyday bus service that runs maybe over 30 or 60 minutes. And say, okay, this is a commitment we're making to the community here. You don't need a schedule. You can just wait, in a well-lit, safe comfortable shelter, and a bus will come every 15 minutes, kind of like the tracks. So yes, but 54th is on the table to have that done. Now, you know what it looks like. It's kind of a mess, but.
Well, to that point, last year in this class did some research on how poorly the connections to the bus stops in 33rd South. Right, it's difficult, dangerous to get to the bus stop. So if you make this BRT corridor along 33rd South, is it part of the work to try to connect to the surrounding network of streets and surrounding neighborhoods better? Because right now it's a hazardous and unpleasant pedestrian environment.
It is, and it's kind of a hazardous environment for cars too. There's some places with no shoulders, no sidewalks. Sometimes people's right of way goes like right out into the streets and personal private property. And so, yeah, it's been a challenge to try and get a bus that could run straight up and down 33rd and serve key stops along the way. But one of the fundamental planning principles we have is that where do we think people are going to need to come from to get to these stops, and then place the stops accordingly. And it's usually, it's near a corner of an intersection. And, but yeah, that's one of the things that our service planners do, is look at what the population is there. The Kmart's, the Home Depots, they're not going to be our target market, right?
But getting to the stops from the surrounding neighborhoods.
Right. So we want to serve the people that are living and need access to it, either by walking or driving to maybe a park and ride location there, or biking to the stops. And so we work with the city. Mill Creek's been a great partner in that particular case for their portion of the corridor there. Yeah.
Over your time at UTA, what do you think the most successful changes in terms of incentivizing ridership have been?
It's a good question. I think the rail system made it was a sea change to get that out into people's communities, right? And give them access to a station. Didn't necessarily need to be, mine is about 1.5 miles away, so I don't typically walk to my track station in the morning, but I'll drive and park. But that means my car is not on the highway. It's not contributing to congestion. Still a little bit of air quality problem there, but it's convenient, right? And if I had to drive much more than that, I probably would just drive all the way into my office. And so I think that's the transformative project of my career here at UTA. And there are plans to keep expanding that, add some lines to the light rail system, keep expanding the front runner lines further north and south.
So we're at time.
Oh, yeah.
But I do have one last question for you. When will you ever start believing in the Eagles again? Sorry, it's a sore subject. GJ is
Born and raised
in Philly, and I was advised that you might be kind of in the States now. So our condolences to you. All I can tell you is, as a lifelong Cubs fan,
you know what it feels like?
yes, it will heal, but it might take a few decades.
It's actually my boss that I worried about, Jay.
Yeah,
He's the
awesome.
new executive director for UTA, is from North Philly. Let's see, I was at his house last night for the party, and it was pretty somber. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's go, Ron. It was a great presentation and a great discussion. Sure.
Looking forward to your projects too.
We, we'll be posting, like we do every week, we post the presentations on the Canvas page, and there's been some questions about that. If you go to the front page of the Canvas site, about halfway down, just before the news article, there are several buttons, several links there, and one of them is to the videos of the presentation. I've also added the PowerPoint slides. If we can get would you okay if we post your?
Oh, yeah, I don't think I have my contact info on there, but I can get it to you. Okay. And then, I'm gonna send you a link for the data portal for data.
Great. Good.
Good. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Yeah, in our page.
Good. So, so the slides and those videos are there. I'm also gonna put a link to videos of projects from our sister class in Portland, Oregon. You might be interested in seeing what your counterparts are doing in that fair city. They are doing work very similar to the work that students in this class here have been doing, and but it's interesting to see their different ideas and different perspectives and so forth. So that's also coming probably in the next day or
We
so.
use them as our baseline a lot. TriMet, you'll hear us talking about them a lot. Yeah, they kind of got it figured out.
Well, certain ways they do. Great, so we'll take our 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll start together and have some discussion for about 10-15 minutes, and then break up into groups. As you'll see, I've slightly adjusted the breakout groups in response to what I've been hearing back from people the past week. We'll talk about that. See you in 10 minutes. No, big one pass.
Yeah.
So this past week, I've gotten lots of great emails from y'all about your projects and your project ideas. And I've got several sets of slides here, quick ones, don't worry, that I want to go through to give you a sense of what your next kind of to-do is for your projects. A number of people have kind of clustered together into kind of groups for their projects. Other people have decided to go solo, I think, or at least they are pre-match, shall we say. It just hasn't happened yet, but that day may come. So we're going to work through some of those issues because we're getting to the point where you really should be kind of moving ahead if you're going to do a project. Notice the conditional. Yeah. And the university students are getting credit. Okay, so let's just be clear about that. But the community students, if you don't want to do a project, no one's going to force you to, and I'm not giving you a grade. And so if you want to just kind of go for the ride, that maybe you already figured that out. But if you hadn't, I just thought I'd be explicit about it. You can just go for the ride, and we're glad to see you, and it's wonderful to have you share our space physically or on Zoom. And so please don't stress over this. But if you are going to move ahead with the project, now is the time to kind of get some things figured out. And what I sent to you as prompts this past week is to get a topic, a fairly specific topic. Because, you know, the first week I asked, what's your general area of interest? What's your general area of concern? And people responded generally, and they should have. That was what I'd asked for. But now we're getting to the point where if you're going to stand up at a city council meeting and ask for something to be put on the capital improvement budget, or a policy to be incorporated into a general plan, you need to have something pretty specific to ask for. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people in the class to do. Because of my frustration with planning for transportation is that too often, you've heard this stick from me before, but too often it's just the experts, it's the people inside the machine who are coming up with the project ideas. And so you see those projects, those lists upon lists of different improvements to different roadways or different transit systems. And you think, wow, where did all those things come from? Well, most of them, not all, but most of them came from professionals inside the system. and I find that incomplete. I think is the best way to put it. And what I think this class provides the opportunity to do is to make those plans, those spending programs a little more responsive to what people in the community want. And so we're trying to get, I guess training is the best way to put it. Experience and training for people who have ideas to take them before decision makers and to at least have a fighting chance of getting those ideas incorporated into plans and into improved capital improvement budgets. So that's what we're trying to do. And if that's, that's your aim as well, then what we need to do is to get a project idea that as I said before, that a decision maker can say yes to. Not that they necessarily will. More often than not, they'll say, interesting, which is Utah for no. They won't tell you no directly. They'll say, interesting. But you want something that they at least could say yes to. And because the first time, very likely, I mean, occasionally, all the stars line up and they do say, yes, let's do that. More often than not, and Michael, I know you have some experience with this, more often than not, you get the, interesting the first time, and maybe, interesting the second time, and maybe the third time and the fourth time, but maybe the fifth time, let's see if we can do something. And that's one of the keys. We're going to have a panel on April 3rd of transportation advocates. And one of the things I know you're going to hear, because this is what they always say, is persistence. Persistence is the number one key ingredient to people who succeed. And I see Dave's like, yeah, you don't get it the first time most often. But if you've got a good idea and it's strategically positioned and it's right sized, and of course it always helps to have good allies, you can make a difference. And as I said, those lists of projects and those plans, yeah, most of them came from inside the machinery, but not all of them. Some of those came from persistent community members, citizens in a city or a county who want to see something happen, and they've persisted and they've succeeded. And so we want to make that happen more often, and that's what we're trying to do. So you need a project idea. We need to be able to state what the issue is and what its context is. Where did it come from? This is kind of the nature, if you've done expository essay writing, this is the opening paragraph, the intro paragraph to an expository essay, is you have to say, what's the topic? Where does it come from? What's its context? Why do I care? Why is it important? Why does anyone care? And so that's really our exposition. What's the issue? Is it an opportunity? Is it a problem? Is it a combination of the two? So it's nice to have a problem-tunity, as we call them. A problem-tunity, where did it come from? Does it have a history? How bad is it? Do you have any personal anecdotes? People who kind of represent or emblematize that issue? And why do we care? Why is it important? That's the setup to your solution. So we're not to this point yet. At this point, we're focusing on these three things. And what I want to do is let's go ahead to that first set of slides. These are slides from last year's set of projects. And I think they're all excellent in their own way. Yeah, go ahead and click that, see what it does. We've been practicing. How does it look? It looks good here.
Still got a little funkiness here. Hold on, let me try that.
Oh, because it's in presenter mode. Here, I know what to do. Yeah. So if we go here, there. Presenter slideshow. Turn that off. Now try it. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Yeah, that looks good there. Does it look good there?
See here, you got the
Oh, you gotta share the screen.
technology, am I right?
Yeah, you're doing great. Ah, beautiful. Okay. So this was obviously Vincent's project from last year, and there's a couple of kind of fancy, semi-fancy. If you know PowerPoint, it's not that fancy, but if you're not really PowerPoint friendly, you're gonna think, "Whoa, that's animation. How do I do animation?" But this, what he wanted to focus on was his general topic, obviously, is first and last mile solutions. And he went from that broad topic to some two specific contexts. So go ahead. All right, so let's go back to that. Yeah. And click on that. And yes, click there. Nope. Oh, we were doing so.
I know, right?
What happened? Here, let me drive for a second.
Yeah.
So. Do something with share. So let's go here. We go to. Let's go there. And share. Yeah. There we go. Yes. Okay. Cool. So what Vince, this is kind of goofy, but he wanted to make it a personal story, and so he's talking about his own personal commute. So he showed us, here I am on my own personal commute with my dog, and that is kind of cute. And people remember those kinds of soft touches. Moving on. He's showing, okay, here's my commute. Next. I could do it by driving. I could do it by various transit options. Go on. And just let it run. And then here is one of my challenges, is getting the pedestrian connection to the track stop at 900 East and 4th South. And this is what I come up 8th East and I get to 4th South, and this is what I'm faced with, are these sidewalk conditions. And that's, so you notice how he has telescoped down from kind of the general concept of first mile, last mile, down to his personal commute, down to this specific, this link, this specific, piece of pavement, and made it very particular. And going on, he noted that this project, he'd done some research and noted that this project was on the long-range plan for the Wasatch Front Regional Council. That was interesting. And then he said, what about this as a potential solution? And so there he has indicated the problem and his potential solution to the problem. He hasn't done a lot on the history or the context or why does it matter, but I'm assuming he did that, or I'm trying to remember if he did that in his verbal presentation. But I think that was a pretty good exposition, and he moved to his solution pretty quickly. Okay, let's go to the next set of slides. I know this is fabulous because we just had so much time. Let's go to this one here. So this one is done by someone you know. And this is Anna's presentation from last spring. Yes, she was involved with the class then too. And you all right with me presenting this?
Oh, yeah,
Thanks. I didn't warn you in advance. So.
okay. Okay.
So I was asking GJ about the 33rd South BRT improvement, and you heard my question. It was like, well, how are the pedestrian connections going to be, bicycle connections going to be to those stations? And the answer, you know, he gave a good answer, but basically it doesn't sound like there's a lot that has been done, and there's a lot that needs to be done. And he did acknowledge that. So moving to the next slide. So from kind of again, like Vince, Anna has scoped down from kind of a broad subject to a very specific geographic context. This is one specific stretch of street and one bus line. And then a picture paints a million words in this case. You know, you really don't have to do much more than just show that. And anybody who's ever ridden a bus will look and say, oh yeah, that stinks. Here is a big problem. And so really in 2 slides, she has.
What's the big problem? That there's not a stop?
Yeah, with the wash from the light, you can't see it as well. You can see it better over here. But that's what the stop looks like. You can go to the next slide. Here's some more features. I mean, it just gets worse. The more you look at it, the worse it looks. So this is the problem with 3300 South as a transit environment. It's a problem as a pedestrian environment. It's a problem for bicyclists. And I agree with GJ. It's a problem for car drivers. You know, there's very narrow lanes. It's not a safe street for anybody. The thing is the car drivers are all shrouded by, you know, 2,000-pound pieces of metal that are protecting them, and everyone else is just out there with their bodies. I guess if you're in a bus, you're pretty well protected once you get on the bus. So I think this is a great use of visual information to tell your story. And then if we go to the next slide, there's video. Thank you. Oh, I forgot. This is great. Well, I love the piece of track that's blowing in the wind. I mean, you notice she was so strategic. It was not a bright, sunny, beautiful day. Made sure it was cloudy and the air was heavy, and that's smart. But you do it. The video. I forgot the video. Video is a great way to demonstrate this expository information. You know, puts the person there, and they can say, "Oh yeah, I know what that feels like. I've done that before." Or if they haven't, they should to experience it. Good. All right. So let's go to the next set of slides. So that's it. Yeah. You're gonna be so good at this. Yeah, it's that one. I think it's that one.
So there's a little discrepancy, but.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'll do.
Okay.
Hit the that button there. Yeah. So precise.
Just do like this for now.
Okay.
So everyone can see it.
That'll be fine. So, okay. I think I know why that happened. Need the apps to go away.
One thing it's another, right?
All right, well, he did, you know, it's always great to have a new challenge in life. You know, you wouldn't want to have everything figured out. That would be just too boring. So we had several people last year who were concerned about a single intersection, the intersection of 700 East and 200 South. And this person, Alec, had demonstrated what the issue was and why the need was so important. Why? Because you want to walk to work, you want to go to get to transit, you want to get to school, you want to get the groceries, coffee, concert, package, doctor, bike fix. You want to go for a walk. And the barrier is being able to safely cross the street without, you know, being thrown into an anxiety attack. Because you're almost hit by a car, hopefully not worse than that. So going on, and I don't know if the animation will work. Yeah, I don't think the animation will work. Fine, I'm done with dealing with technology. What Alec did is he created this little animation for the person walking across the street, that little stick figure there that you see, the green stick figure, it walks across the street, and that car, the blue car that's in the intersection, starts turning while the person's walking across the street. Just to try to create that sense of empathy, that sense of identification of what it's like to be crossing the street when there's someone turning left. And you're looking at them and you're thinking, oh my gosh, are you going to hit me? Do I need to start running? And or am I giving my body over to this? But what Alex also did is Alex actually did some video of crossing the street at night at that intersection, and someone almost hit him while he was videotaping. He was like, oh my God, and the camera goes like this, and it was very effective. So we've got 2 weeks now before our next meeting. So next Monday is President's Day, and we will observe the holiday by not having class. So our next class will be 2 weeks from tonight, the 27th. Between now and then, I'd like to invite you to create a couple of PowerPoint slides. If you're not familiar with PowerPoint slides, let me know, and I can send you some links on how to get quick kind of a quick study on PowerPoint. I don't want to assume everybody knows this technology that is so rampant now in universities, but I'm guessing that many of you are familiar with it, and at least you can open it and start playing around and think about these three things. What is the issue? Where does it come from? Why is it important? And to see if you can create those kinds of at least opening slides so that you can start your presentation of what your ideas are. Yeah.
Where does the file go? And how do you get it to?
Well,
Even in the Canvas files?
yeah, so thank you. You have gone right to implementation. I like that. Because we're going to workshop these 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to look at what you guys have done. So I will send out an email and I'll say, deposit your slides here, or you can email them to me. Sometimes, especially if you've got video information or photo embedded, the files can get kind of big. And so what I'll probably do is create a Google folder that you can just drop them into. That might be the easiest way to do it. But thanks for asking that. I'll get it figured out. And I'll do it maybe a little bit better than we did with PowerPoint.
This is like a start, right? Like maybe just answering a few questions, getting a video, getting context and stuff, not like full project.
Correct, right. We're just doing the exposition. What is the issue? Where did it come from? Why is it important? Dave, I'm sorry, you had your hand up before.
Oh, just that scenario of the car turning left. That's how the little girl was killed. Use that exact.
It's easy to just be staring at the left arrow and have no idea. When you get a left arrow, you're not thinking.
You're thinking, aha,
You're
my
thinking of
turn.
people in front of you and you say, aha, yeah, my turn.
Yeah.
I've been walking a lot. The etiquette between the car driver and the pedestrian is a really interesting thing. Because as a primarily car driver, I'm walking a lot now. I'll always wave, like make a hand signal to the person and they'll do it back. It's really interesting. Where when I'm in a car driving, I find most pedestrians, they're like, I'm not even paying attention to you. They're just on their way.
You know, you can, in Salt Lake City,
Yeah.
you can do more than just wave your hand. You can wave an orange flag.
They have them at each intersection.
Oh, yeah, you have another side. There's a news article on that front page.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I used one of those. The very first important date with my now wife, would be some odd years ago. And I used one of those and I was walking across the street, you know, and I noticed I was walking by myself. She's back there on the curb going, who is this? She married me anyway. Okay, so what I want to do is we're going to break out into groups. We have, I've reshuffled the groups a little bit. Oh, can you put that last slide up there?
Oh, yeah.
And what you do, just close out all the other.
Back to the.
I think that was I had especially if they the presentation.
Oh, yeah, I had that. Quiet.
Yeah.
Look up.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little blurry, yeah.
So. So here, as I understand it, you guys are so sociable, this is great. As I understand it, these are now our groups, okay? And my information is, you know, I do my best, But I put this on the screen in part for you and you on Zoom too. Tell me if I got it wrong, because we've got the ones in red are projects. What I have received information from some of you that you are going to work together on a project. I gave you a name. You like that name? Liberty Park Connections. I thought that was a good name. Isn't that a good name? So Liberty Park Connections, the Mario Capecchi bus lanes. This one, this is not fair. I mean, we should come up with a better name, you know, Red Rock Biking and Walking or something. I don't know. Open Street Provo is pretty explanatory. 200 at our state at 200 South, again, not very imaginative, but and then transit to Canyon Trails. So and then we've got what, 4 other groups that are kind of holdovers from last time, where I'm not sure if people are working together in groups or if they're going solo. And I'm agnostic on that. You know, work together, work on your own, whatever you feel like doing. I'm not going to force anybody to do it if you don't want to do. Heavens, you're volunteered to spend your Monday nights here. You should be able to have control over what you do, right? So, okay, this is inefficient. If I've got something wrong, please tell me, send me an email, talk to me after class, or send a chat text, and I'll get it corrected. So rather than have the little table tenses, I've had them in the past. Those were kind of cute, right? I didn't do that tonight. So what I'd like to do is to have, let's just say these 4 groups: bike facilities, homeless shelters, land use transportation, and Liberty Park in this room. And then everybody else over in the room. I think people are familiar now, enough with the territory. Find your own tables over in the room across the way next to the cafe, and chat among yourselves. Clearly, it's not a much time to do some work. We're probably getting to a time where you might want to start connecting with each other other than Monday nights, in addition to Monday nights, because Monday nights are now getting kind of crowded with our presentations and we talk. So you might want to arrange to get together offline or outside of class. So, at 8 o'clock, the university students, I'd like to have those folks back here to have a little check-in for the university, meaning the 4-credit university students. We're going to do a little check-in here at 8. For the rest of you all, it's been great to see you tonight. I'm not going to have any great words of wisdom. I don't anyways, but I'm not going to have any words of closure. There will be no concluding ceremony to tonight's festivities. So when you guys are done, happy and safe travels. And I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on the 27th. And we'll talk city transportation. Julianne Sabula from Salt Lake City will be with us.